I'm going to get right into it and ask you a question. What gives people power? What gives people power?
Money.
Money.
All right. Money. What else? Position. Education.
Color of your skin.
Family.
Color. Family. Status. What else? Gender. Language. Who
Seniority.
Who you know. Can I put seniority next to status? Seniority. What else? Sorry. Access.
Opportunity.
Age. Opportunity. What else? Class.
Support.
Support.
Geography.
Geography.
Laws.
Laws. History. Weapons. Borders.
Influence.
I got over that 1 years ago. When you're at school and you're dyslexic, that takes your power away. All right. Okay. And we can add to that, and we will add to that. So, if we had to now, let's take gender, for example, over there. If we had to, creating a bit of a binary, I'm going to use the words target and non-target. So, regarding the issue of gender and power around gender, who would you say benefits? Which gender benefits? Power-wise? Male or female?
Male.
Alright, so male. Around the colour of one's skin, black or white? When I use the word black, I'm using it in the political, more holistic sense. So white is non-target, black is target. Men are non-target, women target. Rich or poor? Who's the target? The poor. So that's rich or poor, their money. We've really got it down as class. Any sort of position. So if there's a hierarchy, the top is non-target, the lower would be target. Right? Education, anyone with a matric or a tertiary education, non-target. Less than a matric or less than tertiary, you're getting the picture. All right? Family connections, well-established family, and that can sometimes be quite local. You know, when you carry my surname in the Methodist Church, that's in a particular place, it carries power, right? It's known. All right? Title, reverend, pastor, doctor, professor. So you can have title down here as well, all right? Gives you power. And same as status, weapons, you can go through your language. Which language in this country do you think is non-target? English. And then in various contexts, other languages may dominate in some areas, but by and large we know that English is the non-target and all others in varying degrees would become target. Geography, urban or rural? If we just had to simplify, urban and rural, which would be target? Rural. All right. Who you know, kind of obvious, the kind of connections that you have. Age is an interesting one. What would be non-target regarding age? Okay, so it depends. In some cultures, the elderly are respected. In some, they're ignored. In some, the youth are totally ignored. But if you're in a sweet spot, like from 35, because if you're 34, you're still a youth in some. So from 35 to 55, that's a nice sweet spot. That would be non-target in pretty much many of the cultures of our variations, all right? And then sometimes if you're going older or younger. One of the things that we haven't put up here is sexuality, which would be target. Gay, straight, transgender. Okay? So gay, target, lesbian, target, transgender, target, etc. All right, straight, non-target. We haven't got health up here. So just one area of health could be HIV positive, target. And the varying levels, I guess, of that. All right, with regard to health. Physical stature, size. When someone, size matters. What about beauty? Looks. Good looks. And whatever we've decided good looks are. So there's a cultural norm. And the cultural norms differ in varying communities, but there's a dominant cultural norm. So beauty, size, temperament. What about temperament? Introvert, extrovert, which is target? What about marital status? Married, single, divorced? Divorce is target. Single sometimes, depending.
Widow.
Yeah, widows. And then access to a whole lot of, just access to clean water, for example. Toilets. All right. So what gives people power? If you can put that list up, Andrea, or the things that we've just mentioned. Now, what I would like you to do is to count how many times you find yourself a target. So if you're a woman, then sexism you count as a target once. If you are black, colour of one's skin, you're a target. Just go through it. Make a list. How many times you're a target? Employment would have been unemployed or employed. Some of us are recently unemployed, etc. There's nationality. So a citizen in relation to a foreigner, in relation to a refugee. Count how many times you are a target. Is anyone a target 10 times? 10. Is anyone a target 9 times? Just raise your hand. 8 times. 7 times. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1.
Me.
There we go. Now I want you to think, when you are a target here once or twice, I want you to think of what that target does to you. What does it do to you? Whatever the issue is. It may not do it to you all the time, but in certain circumstances. Give you an example. I'm divorced. I don't feel it a lot of the time, except when I administer or celebrate marriages. It eats a hole in my soul. To death do us part. Repeat after me. To death do us part. I don't say those words. It's like someone taking a dagger into my heart. Now imagine you are a target 10 times. 5 times, 6 times. You live with daggers going in and out of your soul. Just to survive a day is an accomplishment. some of you here may have travelled. Some of you here needed to travel. But some of you here have travelled. English-speaking people here. You may have travelled to another part of the world where people did not speak your language. And how tiring that was. How tiring it was. Now there are some people who live in their own country who expend that energy every single day. But they're not visiting a foreign land, they are living in the country of their birth. And they are using up that energy. But it's unseen. You don't see it. But they're gasping for breath. You breathing easy. They gasp. It's a level playing field. Absolutely level playing field. We're all equal. You getting it? So when you start adding these things, and they're invisible for many, especially for the people who are not targets, these things are invisible. It's like asking the fish, the fish turning around to the next fish saying, "What's water?" They're just in it. They're so close, they can't figure it out. All right, so what gives people power? And we have in this room here varying power differentials. All right? A person like myself, I mentioned one area of target, and that makes me an extremely, extremely powerful and privileged person. Not only am I not target for 99% of these things, but I am at the upper echelons of each one of these categories. With a title, with a surname, with a job, with tertiary education, with. I've even got a pension. All right. Now, why did we start here? The definition, there are varying definitions. The definition that I find most helpful and truthful regarding isms, sexism, racism, related isms, is the following. So I want to suggest that racism is prejudice plus power to act on the prejudice. You got it? Everyone can be prejudiced. Meaning, I don't like you because of something about you. The color of your skin, your gender, your sexuality, etc. Right? That's par for the course. Any one of us can have prejudice. We can prejudge people. Before I get to know you, I've made up my mind about you because of what you look like, because of what you sound like, because of etc. etc. But what turns prejudice into an ism, turns racial prejudice into racism, is all about that, the power to act upon it. If you do not have the power to act on your prejudice, you cannot be racist. You can be prejudiced, but not racist. That is why that's a very helpful definition, because you have heard people on TV, young black students, saying these words: black people cannot be racist. When white people hear those words, they say nonsense. Of course you can be racist. They're speaking out of a particular tradition and a specific definition. This is the definition that they are using. Yes, they're not saying you can't be prejudiced. Everyone can be prejudiced. But to the extent that we have power is to the extent that we can make that prejudice work for us or not. So if you don't have the power, you can't do that. Now we've got to come back to here. How much power do you have? So a person like me has an enormous amount of power. Therefore, if there's any prejudice in me, bam, I can act on it. Makes me racist. One or two examples. When I was about, I don't know, I was probably about 6 years old, riding my red little bicycle. All right? And I was on the pavement riding my bike. Pavement. Pavement where pedestrians are meant to walk. So I'm flying along, going flat out on my bike, turn around the corner. Obviously it's a blind right-hand corner. I go straight into an elderly black man. I fall off the bike. I start crying, sore, scraped knees, and this man begins to, and it's a little awkward because my knees and my legs are threaded through the bike, you know. So he's bending over me like this, and he's trying to pick me up with one hand and try and kind of get the bike with the other hand at the same time. It's a little awkward. Doesn't get me the first time. Two motorists, white motorists in the side, get out the car and start calling him the K word and asking what the hell is he doing to a person like me. A 6-year-old white boy had more power than an elderly, mature African man. Given to me by the colour of my skin, given to me by the laws of the land at the time, given to me, etc., 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 etc. That was 42 years ago. It's come up to 2016. I've just come back from Minnesota. A woman stands up to do the devotions before I talk. She's about that tall. She stands up and says these words. My brother arrived at the airport from overseas to visit our family, and I was terrified for him. He is 6'4", very broad shoulders. He's a triathlete, strong man. But I was terrified for his safety, so I drove however many hours to get to the airport myself so that I could pick him up and drive him back to the family home. And then she says, my brother, my adopted brother, is black. Let's put that together. You've got a middle-aged white woman about that high, of my observation of no physical strength or ability, and she feels terrified for her 6'4", triathlete, strong brother. And felt the need to drive hours to pick him up herself from the airport to protect his life. What gives you power? Some things on this board give you more power than other things. So, from 42 years ago to 2016, incredible power. Incredible power. So, for us to begin to deal with white privilege, we've got to start acknowledging, and when I say we, I'm saying white people, have got to acknowledge our power and the privilege that comes with it. The only problem is, not the only, one of the problems is, it kind of goes against our human. We're very reluctant to own our privilege and power, anybody in any instance. Very reluctant. Because you see, own privilege and power is to take responsibility. And there's something within us that resists wanting to take responsibility. If we can somehow blame, shirk, then we're free of taking responsibility. So, one of the things that prevents white people from admitting, acknowledging white privilege and power is this word here. However you spell it. Is that how I spell denial? There we go. Denial. And then we deny denial. You got it? We deny denial. And one of the things, it works in tandem, one of the motivations for denial is because we don't want to admit to privileged power because then we've got to take responsibility. That's the one reason. But the other is we have a misunderstanding of racism. We reduce racism to incidences. Incidences. Not least the mayor of this town, when they introduced their kind of anti-racism campaign last year, it was all revolving around instances. The mayor would say, well, if as a black person you phone the restaurant and they say they're fully booked and then your white friend phones and there's suddenly a table, give me a call and I'll get hold of the restaurant. Incidences. To reduce racism to incidences, then I begin to think to myself, but hang on, I would never do that. So therefore. And so what it does is it reduces racism to private or personal instances and forgets the structural or systemic that we live in. So denial is an incredible stumbling block to this. So think of Kubler-Ross, the 5 stages of grief. First stage of grief is denial. I'm not privileged. In fact, most of the white people that I've spoken to in this country, their response is, especially white men, is we gave away our power in '94. If you listen to an affirmative action radio program, I'll bet my last rand that the majority of the callers will be white men. Meanwhile, the statistics still tell us that white men are more likely, percentage-wise, to get a job than any other person in the country. But there's a sense of disempowerment. And it's not totally difficult to understand that, because when you've had all power, to have slightly limited power must feel unbelievable, as if you have none. All right? So that's the kind of sense. So there's the denial, and then the response of denial is anger. Don't you call me. Anger. And then the anger moves into bargaining. I've got some black friends, you know. How much does that count? Kind of thing, you know what I mean? And then we realize actually it's beyond all of that and we get depressed. The deep depression sets in and you actually don't know what the hell you're doing with your life. And what do? Because we're kind of in the system and we're guilty as charged with or without doing anything. If I turn left, turn right, I'm just... And it can be quite a depressing place to be. And then we work through that, hopefully, and we get to a place of acceptance. That depression can sometimes be stuck in guilt, white guilt. Feeling guilty for being white. All right? So that seems to be the kind of processes. So, what do we do with some of this stuff? One of the things is this environment, a church, Christian faith environment, should help us pass denial at least. What should pass us? All have fallen short of the glory of God. All are sinners. Therefore, what does it say? If you deny that truth, that we're all sinners, that all of us, then the truth is not in you. So, white people from a Christian perspective should be able to negotiate denial because our theological foundation is, hi, my name's Alan and I'm a sinner. Which should help me to say these words. Hi, my name is Alan and I am racist. What does that mean? I have prejudice and I have power that goes with it. And there are ways in which I benefit from this entire system even beyond my wildest knowledge. And so my theology, my understanding of the human condition frees me to say, not I'm not racist, but I am racist and I need help. I need help. And that's a very different starting place. It's less defensive, it's far more honest. And the truth will set us free eventually. So that's the one thing that can help us. The other is, some of you from a therapeutic or psychological point of view will know the Johari window that divides your life into 4 segments, and which basically goes like this. There are some parts of my life that I know and you know. So the areas of my life that we both know. In the areas of my life that we don't know, I don't know, nor do you know. In the areas of my life that I know but you don't know, we hope it's going to keep that way. And then the areas of my life, listen to the last segment, that you know and I don't know. And that's very, very insightful. That it's possible that other human beings may have insight into me that I do not have into myself. Now, the moment you accept that, that brings you to a place of humility to say, I need to learn about myself from you. Now we can learn. Now we can grow. Now we can mature. And so that the starting point, again, from our theological background is humility. We don't know the things we don't know. And therefore we are open to hearing from other people. Even what I'm presenting tonight on white privilege needs to be up for critique on the very thing and how I'm doing it with my white privilege. Trust me, I can say things tonight that a black person would struggle to get away with saying. They'll say it, but to get away with what I'm saying. So I'm using my very privilege and power right now, talking about privilege and power. And that is what white people need to start doing. White people need to start using their privilege and power to address the privileged and powerful. Whites. For too long, it's been using our privilege and power to rescue black people. So we want to rescue, but the very systems that continue to demean and diminish black life, we don't challenge. And we don't challenge with our privilege and power, which is what I can do much easier than you. I've got access. They let me in without asking too many questions. So I go to America, they let me in. The person who I was with on the plane, just random, next to, you're standing in customs, detained a long time. Of Muslim faith. Of a different colour. So, it's privilege, it's power with prejudice, and our theology invites us to just start very, very humbly with that sort of stuff. Now, one or two things. You said it's not just instances. But I don't want to deny the instances. So there's no part of me that will tie a farm labourer with rope behind my bakkie and drive around my farm. There's no part of me that will do that. But let me tell you the part of me. My uncle gave me a watch once, 2 years ago. antique watch. Well, the thing didn't work the one day. I was in Midrand, wanted to get my watch fixed, so I go to the Boulders shopping mall and I ask, where do you get your watch fixed around here? No, there's this brilliant person, right by Checkers, on the other side. They've got Pick and Pay and Woolworths this side, Checkers that side. Read between the lines. You could have put who's target, who's not target. Checkers, Pick and Pay, okay. So I get there, and it's this tiny little hockey, literally a tiny little hockey, and there's one black man standing there. Right. So I walk in and I need to say, where's the owner? Watch for it. And he says, no, he is. But I'd already taken off my watch. And I just think, it's antique, man. You know what I mean? Okay? So now I'm kind of wanting to put the thing back on. Because it blew my stereotype completely. Here's my stereotype. White, Asian. I mean, those oaks can work on watches, huh? But an African man totally blew my stereotype. Well, while I'm trying to get this watch back on, okay, he's already named it. A Beluva, whatever it is. Ah, wonderful piece, he says. So now I'm completely embarrassed. Okay. So, anyway, it hasn't finished there. Mine. I leave the watch there, but I'm nervous. Because like they're precious stones in those watches. I mean, anyway, I gave him a few hours. I went to the bank. And in line at the bank, I withdraw some money. And you see the tellers. And there are 4 black tellers, 1 Indian, 1 white, and I start to pray. I pray the prayer that many of you pray. Can you hear what's happening? Now, I don't think I'm the only person on this planet that has those thoughts. And this is what happens when you do get to the black lady teller. And she sorts you out politely and quickly. You walk away thinking, things are improving. But if it was white, it's the expectation. I raise these things because these are the things that happen in our minds. And so the suggestion to just quickly say, I'm not racist because I won't tie someone up behind my bakkie, we need to be more honest about our own lives. More honest about our lives. So the one is, it's deeply personal. It's personal, all right? And therefore, when it's personal, we probably need a 12-step program. Right? Where we get together, Racists Anonymous. And we get together. You know what I mean? And we keep coming back. And this is the thing that I hate about apartheid. More than anything else. Well, I mean, and again, that just belies my privilege, what I've just said. Because it's in my veins. It's in my veins. You know, when I grew up, my mom eventually said to me, she said, you know what pained them as parents when we were growing up? That because we lived in a white suburb, the only black people we ever saw were servants. And they were wondering, what is this doing to their child? Well, I'll tell you what it does to your child. It breeds within myself a sense of entitlement, a sense of superiority. It is very difficult for that not to happen. What have you got when you've got a black person or a white person in a room together in this country? You should have 2 human beings, but in this country you have suspicion. It is easier for me to be suspicious of a black person than it is of a white person. That's me. May not be you, but that's me. So the personal journey of confession, of 12 steps, that is going to be a program that myself, maybe others, need to be part of. But to leave it there would be to really reduce it. So the whole structural thing. So you know the phrase, the house always wins, huh? Think of gambling. The house always wins. Why does the house always win? Because the house makes the rules. And the rules, percentage-wise, the algorithm of gambling benefits the house. You always got to have some outliers. You've got to have some people win big, because that'll encourage other people to come. If no one wins, then no one's going to come and play at your establishment. So you've got to have a fine balance. You need winners, but by and large, you need more losers. That's how the system needs to work. And this house is normally, whoever is ruling the house, they normally have done that as a result of that. A thing called a gun. Weapons. On the 12th of October, now coming up, 512 years ago, or 514 years ago, Columbus invaded America. He didn't discover it. Those are two very important words. He invaded the house. 1652, we invaded the house. You invade the house, you set up the rules of the house. Very, very important. So now there's law. And the law tells you what is legal, what is illegal. What is a criminal offense? And what isn't? And then we'll determine the punishment. So there's law. Oh, and by the way, we're going to educate, those who can afford it, educate, whatever. So we doctor the whole education program. So we teach the law, and we teach over and over again what is legal, what's not legal, legal, not legal. And then you've got religion, which tells you that it's from God. It's blessed. And then you've got an economic system, which undergirds all of that, which re-entrenches it like that. Then you've got media. So in this country, black people were not on TV in 1976, unless they were in a subservient role. The first black person in a major role in TV in this country was a comic. Cosby. You can laugh at that. It's the first main character. I mean, it's crazy. 1976, and Hollywood just last, however many months ago, complaining about, you know, the racial bias. Things haven't changed. Media. Who's the hero? Who's the hero? Who's the hero? Who's the villain? So we've got media and we've got culture. It's not our culture to... You getting me? Now when you put that package together like that, it gets so deep. So there's the earth over there. It gets very deep underground, all of this stuff. And it builds society. There's the building of society. But it's built on these things which are so deep, so taken for granted, you're not allowed to question them. And if you do, you threaten that, and you're immediately a criminal. To want free education is a criminal offense at the moment in this country. And then you have history. And history is fascinating. Because what it does is it takes all of these things, adds them up together, and says, you see, it's always been like this. And therefore, it will always be. And of course, it needs to be like that because, so it's in philosophy, what's it, the circular argument. Okay, you use the answer to prove the question, to prove the answer, and it keeps on, it's a self-affirming loop like this. And that's what we have over here. So to give you an example, a number of years ago, a person by the name of Bannister, what was his first name? Thank you. You are such a participatory audience. Okay. You are giving your age away, alright? But I won't accuse you of ageism. So Roger Bannister breaks the 4-minute mile. It was the highlight of the athletics. You know, no one would ever break it, and he broke it. Within a few weeks, a number of people broke the 4-minute mile. Here, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. That's why when Barack Obama became president of the United States, African Americans were saying, now we can achieve everything, or anything. You have to see it to be able to do it. Now, when you've got media, when you've got white angels in the sky and a white Jesus with blue eyes, when you've got all of these things telling me, all the time, I can be a freaking angel in the sky. Why? Because I've seen it. Because every single picture, stained glass window, is a picture of me in the sky. Can any of you here name one stained glass window where you have seen a brown, an olive, a black angel? Black people can never be angels. You hear me? Never. That's what we've just learned. That's what the whole world is saying. Are you getting how white privilege is stuck into everything? Everything. Wherever I turn, my being is affirmed. My body is affirmed. Wherever I turn. And so that's why when you have black students going to university, like UCT or Stellenbosch, I taught at Stellenbosch about 6 years ago. I did one lecture. I walked down the corridor and I had all these old white men looking at me from photographs. These were the designers of apartheid. Designers of apartheid. I wanted to go home and have a shower myself. Can you imagine what other people must feel? Black people, brown people, women, being stared down. And yet, when I raised it 6, 7 years ago, it's like that's just history, man. There were students here, children. It's like you married, and your wife has a picture of her ex-boyfriend sitting right next to her bedside. And she can't understand why it upsets you. She can't get it. She just doesn't get it. Are you hearing that? So we're not seeing now. So that's it now. So there are those people just to get into the doors are breathing heavy already. Just to get into the door. Alright. So there's an entire system that affirms a person like me in relation to other people. And so if we're going to deal with racism, the first thing that I need to recognize then is, one, I've dealt with the personal, that's going to be an ongoing journey with me, but we must never leave it there. I benefit from institutionalized racism. I benefit. If I benefit from it, I must take responsibility for dismantling it. The argument of, did I cause it, did I design it, it's not important as much as answering the question, do you benefit from it? And what I've hoped to be able to show tonight is that every single white person benefits from the way the world house is designed. Right? Think of it more even subtly. Let's go to beauty. I'll put out myself on a limb here. But when you look at black woman beauty pageants, their features are often white. Whites have determined what beauty is. To the extent that a black person can hold that, imitate that, be that, is to the extent that they are named beauty. So rules are designed according to the texture of my hair. Silly little rules that are supposed to uphold discipline in a school, for example, and somehow reveal who is a good child, responsible child. And you've got principals of schools unable to accommodate, not just accommodate, but to be awoken to the truth that there is diversity. So what do black people have to do? Assimilate. So if you want to be accepted, you must fit in. Me, I just go where I go. That's my power. And it goes deeper. So I've been in the city now for 8 years. There's been a homeless couple that I've probably seen for the last eight years or so. They're not there during the week, they're there on the weekends. A couple of years ago they had a child, son. He's 4 years old. He's basically been brought up in the street. Me, Pastor Alan. I walk past them, I say how's it, sometimes I give them some food, sometimes a little bit of money, we walk around, we know each other, etc., etc., etc. So over there I've got a tennis ball, and I play a little bit of ball with this kid. 4 years old. And then I say, okay, cheers, I'm going. And he swears at me with such language that some of you will know it, this part of the world, what we say, or what some people say, and it's horrific, but it's coming from a 4-year-old. And he's just told me about my mum. Alright? 4-year-old. And it completely just broke me. Like, what is a 4-year-old? And within milliseconds, I realized, what chance does this 4-year-old have? What chance? Of getting to 20 without a criminal record? What chance? So let me tell you what's going to happen, play out his life from 4 years old now. In 15 years' time, he would have stabbed someone to death and be in Pollsmoor for another 20. Because the law says he's the criminal. But before he became a criminal, I was the criminal. Here's the real criminality. The real crime is that people like me can walk past him for 4 years and think it's okay. But here's the confession. I can promise you now that if that little boy had my color complexion, there is no ways I could have and would have walked past him for 4 years. You know why? Because what my mom hoped would never happen to me happened. That black and poor and deprived all go together. And so when I see black and poor, it's easier for me to accept. But when I see white and poor, white and deprived, my conscience is awake. What can I do? And I tell that to you because white people here, every single one of you have driven from Cape Town, if not past the airport, at least to the airport. And hear me now. That if those were white people in shacks, we would have stopped. Mark my words. Don't think for 1 second we would put up with such need. Now, to come back to my privilege and power, once this little boy swore at me, it was a day or two later, I made one phone call. One phone. Didn't last longer than 10 or 15 minutes. He's now in a school with 3 meals a day. It took me one phone call. Those are the disparities of power. Now, it took a little boy, 4 years old, swearing at me, raging. The rage that we see in our country before you condemn it, before you judge it. Learn from it. Let the anger and rage be your teacher. Any of you parents here, when your child goes into a rage, you know that something is bothering that child. And if you are any parent of any sensibility, you'd say, child, what is wrong? Tell me, what is wrong? But we don't ask the question, we stop listening. We condemn and then we brutalize further. So let me give you a final maybe example of how I'm seeing things playing out at the moment. And I want to quickly lay out on the ground. All right. You can't see here, but I'm just teaching normally here, and I've got my foot on Roseanne's foot. Okay, so won't you just keep quiet? So, you know, I say, and I shake her hand. I'm very kind to you personally, you know. I've got no problem with black people. I smile, lots of teeth. Lots of teeth. But I'm on her foot. How are you feeling when I'm on your foot? How are you feeling on your foot? Upset and sore. Guess what? We've got a little bit of pain here. We could call it black pain if we want. A little bit of black pain. But anyway, we'll continue. Can you imagine I'm going to just continue teaching like this now for the next day of half an hour? How are you going to feel if you're feeling the pain and I'm ignoring you and they're also ignoring you? How are you feeling now? Frustrated. What's going to happen to your frustration?
I'm angry.
Angry? What are you going to do then? Well, why don't you do it?
I am. But you know, it's on the way to wait.
Did you see that? So now, let's just slow this down. My foot stamping is the system. It exists below Twitter. Beneath the radar of Facebook. You cannot take photographs of the foot. It's the structure. You can't take pictures of it. So there aren't pictures of it. All right? So when she complains, you wonder why she's complaining. In fact, she's sitting in the front row. She's one of the privileged ones. She should be grateful.
And no one else?
And no one else. So firstly, now, has someone ever stood on your toe and not realized that they stood on your toe? Yes, it happens. You can stand, I mean, here's a little edge of the carpet you could stand on. Was it the carpet? Was it a stone? Was it someone's toe? You don't always know. So the first lesson we learn is this. It's much easier to discern pain than it is to discern privilege. So Roseanne here is in a very good position to discern her pain. I am not in a good position to discern my privilege. I got 1 inch taller by standing on her toe, but I didn't really notice. So the first thing is, pain is easily discerned, privilege is not. Then, she's confused to begin with, because I'm polite to her face, but I'm standing on her toe. That leaves confusion. Confusion. Until she gets together with her friends, lots of people, and they go, you also. No, this is not just, no, this is something. And then they start putting the pieces together. And then the frustration, then the anger, then the rage, then the violence, and then you take pictures. Now that's all over Twitter, all over Facebook, of how violent she is. You couldn't take photographs of the violence of the structure, but you could take pictures of her violence. Now, my personal analysis of that is that it's completely and utterly understandable to have a violent response, completely. When you've been ignored, it makes complete and utter sense. Except, I want to say, it's extremely unfortunate strategy. Why? Because now what it does, you've got proof of her violence, which then authorizes me to now not just stand on her toe, but just stand on her head. And I'll stand on her head with all of your support. but it's completely and utterly understandable. So that the strategy needs to be, how do we protest in such a way that we won't deflect from the real violence? Because that's what this violence does. It deflects from the structural violence. And trust me, this structural violence, we can say the violence of pushing has cost 6 million or 600 million or whatever on university property. The structural cost has been billions and billions and billions. But it gives me now time to reflect and to accuse you of the very thing that I have been. All right, I don't know, let me stop there. Let me stop there for a moment. Let's come back. Questions, comments? I'll repeat your question for the sake of the video, not because I'm doing some Rogerian counselling or something. Yes?
I have a question. I go to those who in Cape Town, a lot of people tell me about the PE and how black privilege exists, even PE is essentially black privilege. There's been a lot of arguments on how black students have been, they've got like being access to universities, women white students, even though their marks are lower than their and then there's also the statement that because you have the black privilege, black people also have to. So why are we so angry with black people?
Sure. Okay, so the question was around, I go to a girls' school, white, predominantly white, and the question is, what about BEE? Doesn't that kind of negate the white privilege and power? And that's in the education kind of thing, and not least we've got a black president, etc. So what we see here is that persons, well, the way society is structured, the sum of the parts is much larger than a person. So yes, it's not insignificant that we have a black president. It's not insignificant that by and large we have a black government. Those are wonderful achievements in doing something about the structure. However, if you can imagine, triangles and triangles and triangles. So my privilege is still embedded in all of these things. All of these things, my privilege is still. Whether there's a black president or not, my privilege is still embedded in all of these. So to have a black boss, a black bishop, a black president, doesn't in any way negate my privilege. It is cemented in all of these things with a self-affirming history over and over and over again. It's not insignificant, but it doesn't trump it. Oh, that's a terrible word. All right. But now you ask about, so let's talk about black privilege. So just to come back to, so I've got 3 brothers. All of us are tertiary educated. All of us. We started work when we wanted to start work. That's incredible. And you know what? I hope my stewards are going to test me on this one. But we're probably all going to work until the day we want to stop working. That privilege is just remarkable. Many of the black students today are first generation. First generation. That, it's like again, go back to the 4-minute mile. It's expecting Roger Bannister to break the 4-minute mile the first time, every time. It's a remarkable, remarkable achievement. It's the first to climb Everest. Now every second person climbs Everest every single season. But it's unbelievable. So we can never quite compare the first. What you are trying to absorb in your world at school every single day, the white student next to you has saved all of that energy. So you're not having to just listen to the teacher, 2 + 2 = 4. You're trying to take in a whole lot of other stuff. I'm not. I'm just listening to 2 + 2 = 4. Now that stuff, white students need to be educated. To be able to, so for example, myself, I mean, I've got to be the nicest person in the world to work for. You can ask the people, Michelle works with me and works for me and that kind of thing, you know what I mean? I really got it. I am so understanding. I really am so understanding. It's unbelievable. Now, remember, go back to the Johari window. That's my understanding of myself. If you had to interview the people who I work with, they would have a very different understanding of how non-understanding Alan is. But here goes. I say something like this. I'm very accessible. Me, accessible. Open door policy, anytime. Just come in. When Joyce, whose first language is not English, lives in college, etc., 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 she must be carrying 8, 9, 10 targets. For her to come into my open door policy, she has had to walk up Mount Everest to get there. Just for her, when she comes into my office and she asks me to take off Friday because she must go to Eastern Cape for a funeral. The courage to do that. That's Nobel Peace Prize courage. But we have no clue. So there are tiers of power upon power upon power. Now, I have no doubt that there are some situations where you may have some power. No doubt. It may only just be with your little sister. We're all in power relationships. Everything's a power relationship. Everything. There's nothing devoid of power. I may have a black box. In fact, I do. All right? And that person may be above me over there. And if they're prejudiced and they've got the power over me, they can be racist to me. But the people above him, and above the system and the culture at large is on my side. Does that make some sense? So, yes, you may be my boss and you may have power and you may be prejudiced against white men, etc., and you may make my life a little difficult. But this is what's going to happen. Because we're going to work for Pricewaterhouse and Cooper, an eye accounting firm and that sort of thing. And you, my direct boss, you make my life a little bit of misery. And then we get to Friday afternoon drinks. Friday drinks. And we go there, Friday drinks, and I get there before you. And no, you there, and you're speaking there. And then I walk in, and I overhear the CEO of the company, like the top boss, say something about the Springboks in New Zealand. And you know what I say to him? You're talking crap. Excuse my language. You're talking crap. And then I tell him why. Because I've got a little bit of a different analysis of the language. And you, my direct boss, witness me, your underling, challenging the boss. Because you know what? With a beer in his hand, I can do it about the rugby. And you'll never, ever be able to have that conversation. And so what does that do to me? Think about that. My direct boss, she can make my life a misery from Monday to Thursday, but Friday, she watches me challenge the CEO because I can talk rugby. Can you see that?
You're also a boy.
Of course I'm a boy. Oh, by the way, we went to Rhodes together, you know? And his accounting professor was well. Can you see how these things drip very deeply? But they're blind. We're blind to this. White people, very often we are blind. All right, other comments or questions? Or engagement? Yeah.
Of what she has experienced at the school. The fact that the children are asking the questions,
Sure.
that they get that
Of course.
from their parents.
Absolutely. That's why at school, what there needs to be, I mean, just think what have we witnessed? What have we witnessed? We've witnessed young black students protesting. What's missing? Where are the white students saying, we acknowledge our privilege and power and we don't want these, we need to deconstruct, we need to do stuff about it. We will protest the white principal lady. But that hasn't happened, which reveals our denialism, which reveals our blindness to this. And it is not helpful, I'm sorry, let's get to UCT, it is not helpful for a bunch of white students, by and large, not completely, to start saying UCT open. Unfortunately, it's too simplistic. It denies too much. There's a more complicated, nuanced narrative that needs to happen. Yeah.
I just want to know, where does our role as Christians play into the structure, and even being a white Christian?
Well, as a white woman, you have the privilege of understanding a little bit of what it means to not have all the privilege, because you have been brought up in a patriarchal society. Just a little bit. It's very interesting, just if we go to Donald Trump for a second. No, seriously, he has said the most abhorrent things about black people, the most abhorrent things about Mexicans, foreigners. It's only now his sex tapes about basically white women that's crossed the line. So there's a grade of power which we're trying to show with the target non-target. What is our role? Our role is one, can we confess? Just confess. Privilege and power. A little bit of an example on it. 1966. The government, how about free education? How's this? The government paid per head 74 Rand 30 for every white student in 1966. And for black Africans, 2 Rand 30. 74, 2 Rand. 74, 2 Rand. Hold on those figures. Now take the economic stats of the country today. For every 1 Rand that the lowest 10% of the population gets, the top 10% of the population gets about 55 Rand out of 100. So if there's 100 Rand, the top 10% take 55 Rand away, and the bottom 10% take 1 Rand.
For education?
No, for everything. Everything, income.
Okay.
Income. Now, why I use the figures to mirror, because it's like Olympic gold medals. The country that wins the most gold medals is the country that has paid more for the training of the athletes. It's literally a $1 gold medal exchange. That's exactly what it is. Been proven over and over and over again. So go back to 66, 2 Rand, 74 Rand, come to 2016, 1 Rand, 55 Rand. So that legacy is what you and I are. Now, think of it this way. If you're not a first-generation student, the leeway of being able to pay off a house, pay off a car, pay your student loan, etc. Think of a black family, first generation. Very often first generation paying a new house, new car. There are so many news and the anxiety. Yeah. So, one is, please, surely our faith would bring us to the place of not being afraid to confess our sin. And when do I mean that? I mean sin personally, but yes, I need to deal with what's in my brain. But sin, I benefit from a system of sin, a system of death. So I need to just put up my hand and say, yeah, I benefit. And the moment you and I can be honest about that, we can go on a new life. We can go on a new journey. I can't tell you the steps of that whole journey. I'm just trying to figure it out myself. But what I want to categorically say, you will be fundamentally turned in a different direction if you start from that place of, yeah, I've benefited. That's who I am. And all lives do not matter in this world. my life actually matters more. That's why we've got to highlight the lives that don't matter. Example, in August, in a little place called Delft. Not just in Delft, but in a little place in Delft. 31 people were shot dead in 31 days. Not a single front page headline of a single newspaper. If I had to get shot up now as I walk to my car, I promise you I'll be on the front page of Cape Times tomorrow. And that's all you need to know, friends. That my life is worth 31 times more than theirs. And we can't live in a world like that, because we live in a world where God has created everyone whose life matters. And Jesus came and gave his life for everyone that matters. And if I could just say one last thing about that, this all lives matter stuff is a whole lot of nonsense. An example that we'll be able to see more clearly, the rhino is being poached left, right and centre. And so it's not surprising that some people want to save the rhino. But when you go to a meeting of saving the rhino, no one puts up their hand and says, but what about giraffes? Because giraffes are not endangered. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we're acknowledging that in actual fact they don't matter in the way society has been structured, the House rules. And therefore, we want to correct the House rules, so we must state it very clearly. And giraffes take a back seat. Take a back seat. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there, hey?
Yeah.
Andre, is that right? Oh, one last, and then we'll, yeah.
This one is listening to you, that's quite beautiful. Very, very cultural.
Can't hear.
I'll repeat it.
An added aim is that it has to be a white man to articulate something before people listen. And that is an additional thing.
Absolutely. So, I mentioned earlier that I'm using my privilege and power to even conduct this conversation, knowing full well that I can get away with saying things to white people about white people that you can't. And so what has just been said is that it's been painful to listen to me. And the added pain is knowing that we needed a white person, we didn't need it, but to have a white male to articulate our pain. How bizarre is that? How bizarre is that? Now that is excruciatingly painful. But, and yes, and again, you've got to push back. It's, you know, you come back, you fly back into this country and you arrive at an airport and you've got black security guards and you've got white people walking past them like they don't exist. Try that in America. So I plead with you, white people, I'm not talking black people, white people here, own your privilege and power and start using your privilege and power to address white people with their privilege and power. If you're a pastor of a white congregation, have the guts to have these conversations. Otherwise, we're just being part of the problem. And these conversations will happen eventually. But they will happen with such rage. Because if you've been ignored for so long, that's going to be completely and utterly understandable. So we're going to go home now, and we're going to go home to dad, to mom, to child, to whatever. Some of you have nephews, nieces, children, grandchildren at UCT complaining that they're missing their education. They're not simple matters. They're not to be ignored that, but there's a much deeper narrative that they need to awake to. They need to awake to. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.